Well, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is not happy with the Canadians and their negotiating style. Donald Trump now has said he has canceled all ongoing trade talks with Canada in what potentially can be described as a little bit of a shakedown. It's the same thing that Trump did with the EU. The EU wasn't being fair, at least the Trump administration thought, during the trade negotiations. And so what resulted was a more favorable negotiation, and they kickstarted them again. And that might also be what happens here with Canada. We know there are the Canada tariffs that are already on, including the steel tariffs, the automobile tariffs of 25%. And so there was a negotiation to potentially redo maybe a longer trade deal with both Canada and Mexico. But now Trump, because of their negotiating style, at least for the time being, and by the way, the Canadians have already said we're going to address this, and we'll see if that ends up happening. I would imagine it would happen in terms of them address this and potentially help Trump out and appease him, just like the European Union did. But Trump says we've been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, and yeah, you look at the trade issues with both Canada and Mexico. Mexico is a lot more workable in terms of how they negotiate with the United States, and they're able to seemingly have a better relationship with the United States when it comes to trade negotiations. Canada has always been difficult, and so has the EU. And this reminds me a lot of the EU thing. When Trump didn't like the way they were negotiating, he threatened them with very, very high tariffs. I said, it's very unlikely it's going to happen. He threatened them with like 50% tariffs or whatever. And then they were able to discuss, reconvene, and have some type of temporary agreement that allowed them to negotiate in better faith, I guess, for the administration. But what Trump says here, including the fact that they have charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs for years on dairy products, have just announced they're putting a digital service tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country. They're obviously copying the European Union, which has done the same thing and is currently under discussion with us also. Based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada effective immediately. We will let Canada know the tariff that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. And so Trump gives the timeline, which will force the action from Canada. And it's already being reported. Some of the big time people within Canada are saying we should eliminate this tax we have that Trump doesn't like because they're very reliant on trade with the United States. Obviously, they don't want their tariffs to go back up. There was a showdown between the United States and Canada, kind of a mini one, not to the same level as China. But if we have massive tariffs on them and then they have tariffs on us, they will always suffer significantly more than we will. They are much more reliant on the United States consumer base than we are of the Canadian consumer base. Of course, we would know that based on how rich Americans are. And so, yeah, I think this is another shakedown by Trump. He wanted something to be eliminated. They go to him, they tell him this is what's happening, this is the holdup, this is what they're implementing. He doesn't like this extra digital service tax that they have, which I guess is what the European Union was trying to do or are currently doing, that Trump doesn't like. But we've seen Trump use these tactics before, and I would imagine the 7-day period will likely yield some positive results in terms of Canada removing this. That's what I would guess. And then potentially some type of a trade deal with both Canada and Mexico. We will see. We also have this situation. I have not done a video on this. Zoran Mandani, who is right now the favorite to be the next mayor of New York City. He is a socialist and a literal socialist, meaning he comes out and he says he's a socialist. You know, it's funny in the United States, it's like, if you come out and you say you're a socialist, you're probably actually a communist. Now, they are different, but I always call socialism like the baby version of communism. You actually cannot practice communism in the United States as like there's a law against it. There's a 1954 act against communism, but you can't even implement communism based on the system we already have set up. When it comes to, and I'll talk about Mandani, why did he win? I'll try and hit all of that right now really quickly. When it comes to socialism in general, I mean, technically our economy already has certain aspects that are socialist. Now, obviously, he's trying to take it to the next level. He wants to tax all the rich people. One of the funny thing with these socialists taxing rich people, the way they're able to do that or spin that is because they say, well, rich people already have a ridiculous amount of money. And how did they acquire that money? Through capitalism. So they're basically trying to fund government programs through capitalism because people are ultra rich. And it's like, well, that's insanely unpopular. You're telling people to give up more money to the government. Well, you can kind of get away with it when it's just the ultra wealthy. And how do people get ultra wealthy? Through capitalism. So it is kind of funny how capitalism pays for their social programs that they hate so much. But I know he's attempting to raise taxes, but with him, it's like the rent freezes, which are a complete mess. It's interesting with New York City. They already had rent freezes. It was kind of like a trial period for them for like 2 years because of COVID. And there were problems. The issue is there's no incentive to renovate housing units if you're a landlord, if there's rent freezes. And you don't, it creates this fake market, this fake demand, or there's no demand because, it's frozen. And then you've also got other things like the state-run grocery stores. We know the grocery store is famous for price gouging. I mean, I think Kamala Harris had something like that. What is the margin, the profit margin, like 1.3 to 1.6%? The reason I remember that is because, Kamala Harris had something like that and it was big. But, the state-run grocery stores, the generic food everywhere, creating food deserts. I mean, these have been things that, to be fair to Mondani, I mean, socialism has never been tried anywhere. You know what? I think maybe Cuba, maybe Cuba might have an opinion on it. I don't know. But, I mean, it is what it is. You can sit here, but we'll see what ends up happening. Normally, when someone like this, if he does get in, it's going to end up being a very neutered version of socialism because he's going to want to get things passed, even though New York City is very liberal. Another interesting thing about Mondani is the fact that, I mean, number one, born in Uganda, he's going to run New York City. Is that not a globalist wet dream? Like, just this country has zero identity. And you look at New York City, there's reports that 45% of the people of their population right now is foreign. So they were not born in the United States, almost half of their population. And I mean, the demographics, 31% white, like 30% black, 40% Hispanic. That's what New York City is. But it's funny because if you look at the demographic breakdown on this election, Cuomo won blacks by like 30 points. Cuomo won Hispanics by like 20 points. Young white liberal women, overwhelmingly Mondani, and then they characterize it as Asians, but it's Muslims, heavily Mondani. So it's interesting how that works. And now you've got Eric Adams, who's going to be running as an independent. So he's not running as a Republican. He's not running as a Democrat. The hope is that the Republican steps down or endorses Eric Adams because Eric Adams probably will get the liberal black vote because of Cuomo beating Mondani in terms of that, it's not for sure, but we would expect Eric Adams to be able to draw a lot of the conservative vote, a lot of the liberal black vote, and the liberal Hispanic vote as well. And if that happens, he might beat Mondani, but we'll have to see, with this situation. I know a lot of people also say, well, because there was a debate clip and Mondani was the only one that said he wouldn't go to Israel, people are sick of Israel. That's not what this is. These are 25-year-old liberal girls voting for Mondani. Do you think they're based against Israel? The reason is because he's a socialist and it's the ultra woke stuff and he's committed money to fund trans surgeries. That's what this is. And it's, the socialism, we're going to make sure everyone is helped out and the rent freezes. That's what this is. It's those economic policies. That's why it is. It's not because he's based against Israel. But I mean, people are just, it's this tunnel vision against Israel, but that's not the situation at all. But I mean, that was a bad clip with Cuomo and all of them cucking and saying they would go to Israel first and stuff. I agree with that, but that's not why he won. But we'll have to see how he ends up doing if he actually wins. I think what is it, in November? So against Eric Adams and maybe a conservative, but either way, yeah, that ended up happening. Conservatives got real angry about it. And again, it's like, listen, if he ends up winning, there's going to be a huge exodus. You can't be, you're operating in a country and certain things, the way that they can do this is because New York City is such an important piece of land for networking and investing. You kind of have to use it. So at this point, it's like, you kind of know what you're paying when you go to New York City. I mean, it is what, especially if you're a rich person. I think it's over $1 million. He said it was going to be hiked up in terms of taxes. But his big thing is like, It's the state-run grocery stores. I mean, we're gonna get the commie grocery stores. Imagine going into one of those things. How depressing is that? Um, and then the competition. It's gonna be hard. You go up against a state-run grocery store. It's like NFL players against Pee Wee because they don't have to worry about any of their costs at all. The state runs, which is the issue, and that's how you create food deserts. But I don't know, man. We'll have to see how this ends. Again, to be fair to him, socialism has never been tried before, so we don't know if it's going to be successful. See, being sarcastic there, but look, it'll probably be a neutered version of it. I mean, I don't know how you implement half of this stuff. Being a mayor, you don't have the power. It'll get shot down at the state level, probably in a lot of cases. Although who knows? We'll have to see how it ends up going. Either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.